Sylvia Daw is our next speaker, and I can't wait for you all to hear her speech about compassion and empathy.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Daw. In 2019, I was admitted to a residential treatment center. For those of you who don't know, an RTC is a place where people, often teens, go to get therapeutic help for various problems. Some people have drug problems far beyond anything I ever witnessed here in Sammamish. There were girls who suffered from fetal alcohol syndrome, something I could never fathom going through. There were girls who had been abused and mistreated by almost everyone in their life. And then there were girls like me. I'm from the suburbs. I'm very lucky to have fantastic parents who undoubtedly love me. I've had various support in school. I'm grateful for financial stability. On paper, I have a great life, so why did I end up in a treatment center? Well, I was depressed. There are various reasons I could be depressed. I've had psychologists and psychiatrists mention onset borderline personality disorder, some have mentioned bipolar disorder, but in all honesty, it does not matter. What matters is I have dealt with depression and anxiety for a long time now. And now, more than ever, teens across the country are grappling with the same feelings I've dealt with my entire life. My heart breaks seeing my peers who were once bubbly and carefree, stressed and starting to reach their breaking point. Most people are not going to get the therapeutic intervention I was lucky to get. Which begs the question, what can we do to, one, help our friends and peers battle depression, and two, what can we do for ourselves to make existing a bit easier? Through my experiences within a rehabilitation center, I believe that the one thing that will help people stand up to their demons is empathy. I know you're probably thinking, empathy? You think empathy is the cure to depression? Yes and no. I don't think there's a clear cure to depression. However, I think the people who are the happiest and most relaxed are the ones who have both empathy for others and themselves. At its core, empathy is a very simple concept. It is the ability to share feelings with others. A good simple example of empathy is if you see someone fall down and scrape their knee. You ask them, "Are you okay?" Then you maybe offer them like a band-aid. In this example, the person knew to ask if the other person was okay because they can share the feeling of scraping your knee. They can empathize and imagine it must be so painful, and their actions show this. Empathy becomes harder thing to grasp when we are faced with someone whose experience is much different from ours. It might be hard to have empathy for someone who has different political views than ourselves, someone who we perceive as unworthy, or someone whose experience is just nothing we could ever imagine. More and more often now, I see examples of anti-empathy, or commonly known as apathy, which is when a person does not acknowledge the deeper feelings another person has or does not put in the work to understand another's experience. When I was living in the RTC, apathy and empathy were always right in front of me. It's easy to spot when you're living with others. Empathy would happen when two girls understand each other on a deeper level. One time, one of my peers was crying in the bathroom, so I asked her, "What's wrong?" And she expressed to me that she was upset because she desperately wanted to go home. We then talked and sat with each other for a while. I asked her questions about how she was feeling, acknowledged how hard it is to be away from home, and how hard it is to not be with our families. I asked her what I can do to help her, and we came up with a plan for her and me to check in with each other often about her homesickness. I observed anti-empathy and apathy within myself when I was faced with something new or different. There was this one girl, Joyce, who was interesting to say the least. Joyce would often scream and cry to get whatever she wanted. She complained about having no friends, which everyone thought to be odd considering she was so frustrating and, quite frankly, annoying. On roommate switching day, I was paired with Joyce. I was angry. I did not want to spend every night having to listen to Joyce argue with a staff member or another girl. I tried to get out of it to no avail. I would lash out at Joyce sometimes. I'd get angry at her for crying at night because I wanted to sleep. I ignored her in school because, like I said, she could be kind of annoying. Empathy can help dealing with a person like this. If I had been empathetic, I would have realized that Joyce is in rehab for a reason, just like me. She screams, cries, and argues often, most likely because she's still struggling on the inside. If just one person had shown Joyce kindness and compassion, she might become softer and easier to deal with. During my last month in the RTC, I decided to try and make things right with Joyce. In my personal life, I was working on making things right with my family, so why not try with Joyce? We sat down, and I genuinely asked her what was going on with her life. I don't think anyone had genuinely wanted to talk to her for quite some time. She lit up when I asked her questions about her life. She told me about some scary things that had happened in her childhood. Like I said before, Joyce was really struggling in her mind. She expressed to me in our conversation that she had a lot of trauma and was working on not being so argumentative and frustrating. Joyce and my conversation took 30 minutes. That is about 2% of a day. Our conversation meant a lot to her. In my last month, I tried to be nice to Joyce and remember that she probably feels sad and hurt inside, just like everyone else at the RTC. On my last day in rehab, Joyce thanked me for being kind to her, even if it was only a month. I made an impact in a girl's life by just being empathetic and listening to her. Sure, I did not cure Joyce, but my little acts of kindness gave Joyce a tiny bit of positivity in her life. My point here is empathy helps other people feel better. It can also help us feel better deep inside. For most of my life, I have been worried about failure and rejection. I can easily go from being calm and collected to shutting down and crying in a public bathroom. I worry about college and relationships and if I'll ever truly be happy. I think this is something a lot of teens worry about nowadays. We are so focused on being the best in everything that we forget to have fun and take care of ourselves. When I become overwhelmed with my schoolwork, stressed about friendships, I've learned to take a minute for myself. I urge everyone out there to take a second and have empathy for yourself. Acknowledge that you're working so hard every day, and it's okay to take a break every so often. I urge you to remember that the only thing you need to be the best at is being your true, authentic self. Every day, be kind to others. Remember that everyone has a story. Everyone has successes and failures. And equally remember that you matter. Your mental health and physical health matter more than a letter grade or a teacher compliment. By being a little more empathetic in our daily lives, we have an opportunity to raise a more genuine, kind, and loving generation. With empathy, we can promote a happier, brighter, and better future. Thank you very much.
Sylvia, thank you so much for sharing about empathy. It's not something I hear talked about often, so your speech was refreshing to hear.
Thank you so much.
So, in your speech, you shared a few examples of how the empathy that you have been able to show others has helped them. Could you please share some times when and how empathy someone else displayed to you helped you?
Of course, I think empathy is so important. And some of my most defining moments in my life have been from empathy. I think I didn't go deep into my experience in the treatment center, just because it's a really personal thing. But when I was in before the treatment center, I was in a hospital, and in the hospital you meet a lot of interesting people. And I remember I was pretty depressed and sad when I was there. This was the first time being away from home, and I knew that I wouldn't be back home for many years. And then there was this boy there who he was there for reasons that would maybe, I don't know, scare some other people. And I remember I got a letter from my sister and I just started crying because my sister and I have always had a rocky relationship, and getting a letter from her meant a lot. And he just looked at me and said, you know, I know how it must feel to get a letter from your sister. And I just want you to know, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. And he gave me a hug. And that was just, I will always remember that moment. It was so nice to feel like someone got me. It was kind of one of the first moments, I think, in my journey through recovery that someone truly understood how I was feeling. And it was just so special. And yeah, it was just awesome. I will always treasure that memory.
And then next, so from your talk, it became clear to me that showing empathy towards others does not only help them, but having that empathy helps us as well. Could you share a few more words on that idea?
Yeah, so I think as a more society, and especially personally, we worry a lot about what others think about us. It's just a thing that everyone is always worried about, like, oh, what does this person think about me, about the way I dress, about my personality? And I found that being empathetic instead of judging others helps me feel better inside. It sounds like kind of a weird concept, but when we stop focusing on the way other people are judging us, we start realizing the good traits about us because just judgment becomes less apparent in our lives. So when I started being more empathetic and actually listening to people and not judging them for just basic things or, I don't know, just surface level things, it became more apparent in my life that the good people, the people that I want to be around, aren't going to be judging me for those things either.
Great. Thank you so much for your answers, Sylvia. Now we're going to go back to the MCs.